Hi, Sean Still, and in this video we're going to talk about um, some of the options that we have available to us when we are looking at a backlog. So from our home page, we're going to go to Projects. We're going to select our project. And by default, it opens up into the backlog. Our navigation page pane has gone from blue to gray, which tells us that we are in the project. Um, so, um, so the backlog. The backlog is where you do your planning. The backlog has a lot of data and it has a lot of functions that we need to go over. All right. So the very first one is we within the backlog over here we've got a versions pane and an epics pane. And in this project, I went and I set up a hierarchy, if you will. So our versions are our major releases. Those are our major milestones that we are shooting for. So they are kind of top of the pyramid, if you will, and everything underneath it supports it. In this case, our test project is based on my wife leaving for a week to go visit her mother. So I broke it down into two major releases, one being the first week that she's gone and all the things I need to do while she's away, and then the second week that of all the things I need to do while she is away. So if I open up the versions, it gives me some key pieces of information really quickly. One is gives me the title, gives me the description if I put one in there. It also gives me the start date if I've entered one and the release date if I've entered one. Also gives me the number of issues that are in this release, how many have completed, how many are unestimated, and what the total estimate is. So really quick snapshot of some key pieces of information. The other interesting thing that it does is if I click on it, you can see that it turns blue and it takes all of the issues that I have in my backlog and it's filtered it to only the ones that apply to this particular version. All right, so this is Wife is Gone week 1, and if you notice, that's all that I see is Wife is Gone week 1. I can clear the filters, and now I'm back to seeing everything, and you can see that Wife is Gone week 2 is showing up again. So in this case, I'm going to click on Wife is Gone week 2. It's turned blue, so the filter's on, and that is all it is showing me. And now I am not seeing anything for Wife is Gone week 1. Once I am done with that particular view, I can clear all the filters. And now I'm back to seeing everything. I can go ahead and I can collapse this pane just by simply closing it. And now I'm left with the epics. Epics are, typically major features or goals for a sprint. In this case, I've laid out each day has its own epic. So I can open up the epic and I can see some key pieces of information. In this case, Tuesday week 1, I can see has 10 issues total. None have been completed, none are unestimated, and the total estimate of all these issues is 31. Just like the versions, if I click on it, it is going to quickly filter out only the issues that apply to that particular epic. Once I'm done looking at that, I can go ahead up here, I can hit clear all filters, and now I'm back to seeing everything. I can create an epic right here if I want to. or I can go ahead and I can close this pane if I am done with it. Now, um, in the backlog, if I am looking for something very specific, I can type it in and it will begin to find it. All right, in this case, I want it to narrow down walk the dog. So, oops, actually, sorry. In this case, I want it to look for SSTP-45. So I'll start typing in SSTP-45, and it found that particular issue. I can click the X, close it out. I'm done looking at that. If I have any quick filters set up, quick filters, I'll talk about it at a different time. If I have any set up, I can quickly narrow down certain pieces of information based on that. Same thing right here with assignee. Allows me to quickly filter out particular pieces of information that are relevant. Over here on the three dots gives us some options. Board settings. Board settings I'm going to go into later on. Creating a board, we already did that. Hide the menus, show detailed views. These are just different ways of viewing the information. Or we can actually take these cards and print them out. So it gives us quite a few options here. Working from the top down, our top is always going to be either our next sprint or it's going to be our active sprint. In this case, I haven't started the sprint, so it says start sprint. Plan sprint allows us to, if we have requirements or if we have notes or anything or any kind of key piece of information that we want to associate with this sprint, we can do that by selecting one of these options right here. If we click on the three dots, we can do a couple things. We can edit. If we edit, it gives us the opportunity to edit the name of the sprint and even the sprint goal. Or I can move the sprint down. Notice that day 2 moved up and day 1 moved down. If I click on it again, I can move it back up, and there it goes. Or I can delete the sprint. Delete the sprint generally isn't available to most people. It's very role specific. So don't be surprised if you don't see that option there. All of the, after the planned sprint or the active sprint, or I should say the next sprint or the active sprint, we have our planned sprints. Our planned sprints may or may not have information in them. If they do have information, we can do a little bit of sprint planning. If we want to, we can reorg or reprioritize these stories just by simply dragging and dropping them into different pieces, into different locations. So for instance, if I want to let the dog out first thing in the morning, I can just move that one straight to the top. If I move it back down here, one of the other options I have is I can hover over the story, right click on it, and it gives me the option of moving it to a different plan sprint, the top of the backlog, bottom of the backlog. I can delete it if I want to. A lot of people don't have that permission. Also don't recommend delete ever for different reasons, or for a variety of different reasons. I can add flags, like split the issue, or I can print the card. In this case, I'm going to, let the dog out. I'm going to let that be the first thing I do in the morning, so I'm just going to take that, drag it out of the top. When I do click on an issue, it opens up this information pane right here about the story. And if there is something I want to edit it, or edit in the story, I can do that right here if I want to, or I can close it out. If I want to collapse just to help me view things. I can collapse a sprint or expand the sprint. Also gives me a couple key pieces of information. Tells me how many issues I have in this particular sprint. If I expand it and I go all the way down, it also gives me another good one, and that is how many issues and what is the total estimate of those issues. So in this case, 13 issues total, and of those 13 issues, it totals 32 points. Again, giving me key pieces of information I need to do my sprint planning. Anything that is not in an active sprint or a planned sprint will go into the backlog, and the stories can be moved up or down in a backlog. If I want to create another planned sprint, I can come over here to create sprint. I click on that, and one of the interesting things that Jira does is it tries to anticipate what I'm going to call the next planned sprint. So if my planned sprint was 30 and I go to add another one, it's automatically going to think that I'm going to call 31. In this case, my planned sprint was day 5, no idea. So when I added another planned sprint, it thought the next one was going to be day 5, no idea, number 2. That's not quite what I want to call it. Nice try, but it didn't quite work. So I can come over here to my 3 dots, and I can delete the sprint if I want to. I can move the sprint up, or I can edit the sprint. In this case, I'm going to edit the sprint. I'm not going to call it day 5. I'm going to call it day 6. And I get rid of the 2. And I'm going to give this one a name of total guess, and later on I'll explain why I called it total guess. I'll hit update, and there you go. If I want to put any issues into this plan sprint, I can just drag and drop them. Very easy, just like that. Or I can drag it and drop it, whoops, back down, and come on, back into my backlog. So that is how we use the backlog to do our sprint planning and to manage our stories. Thank you very much.